Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into something pretty fascinating. A comparison of education in India and China.
Right.
We've got some great material here looking at, well, everything from history and culture to tech, global standing, even student pressure.
Exactly. And the idea isn't just to list facts,
Oh, definitely not.
It's about digging deeper. What are the real strengths, the weaknesses, and maybe, just maybe, what could India potentially learn or adapt while staying true to itself?
Precisely. Because understanding these two, I mean, they're huge players, right?
Yeah.
It gives us a lens on global competition, economic growth, innovation, all that crucial stuff.
It really does. So whether you're into global trends, education policy, or just curious about how different cultures tackle learning, hopefully this will give some valuable perspective, those aha moments.
Okay, so where do we start? Maybe the foundations. History, culture.
Makes sense. Lay the groundwork.
So for India, you think of those ancient universities, Nalanda, Takshashila. I mean, wow, centuries ago, right? Deep learning happening there.
It points to a really long, rich intellectual tradition, absolutely.
But then,
Yeah, you have the British colonial period, Macaulay's Minute specifically. That really shifted things, didn't it?
big time. English becoming dominant, a certain style of education being imposed. How much does that ancient legacy really filter through today, considering that colonial overlay?
That's a really critical question. Because you also see this persistent focus on rote learning, on exams. It's still so prevalent.
Yeah, it feels miles away from, say, the old Guru Shisha idea of mentorship, or even the older value-based education emphasis.
And that legacy of rote learning, it definitely creates friction when you try to implement something like the NEP 2020, which is pushing for more skills, more critical thinking.
Right. It's like changing deeply ingrained habits for teachers and students. A huge challenge for the NEP to overcome, practically, in the actual classroom.
It is. It's a massive pedagogical shift that's needed.
Okay, let's pivot to China. Confucian philosophy seems absolutely central there, that deep respect for education for teachers.
It's fundamental. You see it culturally. It fosters perhaps a more disciplined environment, a higher societal value on academic success.
And the Giju, the old imperial exams.
Amazing, isn't it? That centuries-old system embedding ideas of meritocracy that you can still kind of see echoes of today.
Yeah. And how does China's collectivist culture play into this?
Yeah.
Seems like more emphasis on conformity, group goals.
You do tend to see that. More uniform teaching methods, maybe more group work, shared responsibility. Discipline, definitely.
Which raises questions, I suppose, about individual creativity compared to, say, India's more diverse, sometimes more individualistic approach.
Potentially, yes. It's a different balance. And we can't forget the Cultural Revolution's disruption in China.
True. A major upheaval.
Followed by really significant reforms starting around 1978, a huge push towards modernization and academic rigor after that period.
So wrapping up the foundations, both value education highly, obviously, but very different paths. India, diverse, English-influenced, complex.
Yeah.
China, more uniform, Mandarin-focused, shaped by Confucianism and those later reforms.
That sums it up pretty well, yeah. Different roots, different systems today.
Okay, let's get into the structure of curriculum then.
Yeah.
India's classic 10 plus 2 plus 3 system. Now moving to this 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 under the NEP 2020. That's a big structural redesign.
It is, aiming for something more aligned with developmental stages, more holistic. But
the exams.
The exams, yeah. The sheer weight of the board exams, CBSE, ICSE, state boards, and then JE, NEET for college entrance. It's immense.
How does that focus, even with the new policies, still shape everything? Does it maybe, narrow the learning?
It almost inevitably does. Creates huge pressure, focuses teaching on the test, potentially sidelining deeper understanding or broader skill development.
And you got that variability across states in India too, right? Curriculum quality isn't uniform.
Not at all. Huge variations.
So what's NEP 2020 trying to do about these things specifically?
Well, the goals are ambitious. More flexibility in choosing subjects, pushing interdisciplinary stuff, a bigger focus on vocational skills, critical thinking, trying to move beyond just rote learning.
And multilingualism, too.
Yes, promoting multilingualism is a big part, acknowledging India's diversity. But again, implementation is the key challenge. Needs teacher training, resources.
Right. Now, China's structure 633. Primary, junior, middle, senior, middle, simpler, more linear.
It is more standardized, yeah. And that's reinforced by the centralized national curriculum from the Ministry of Education.
So everyone studies pretty much the same thing across the country?
Largely, yes. It ensures consistency, a very different model from India's federal system where states have so much say.
And then the GaoKao, We hear so much about it. We have tough exams in India, but this seems next level. Just how high stakes is it?
It's hard to overstate, really. It's widely seen as the defining event. Your score basically dictates your university options, which then massively influences your career, your social standing.
Wow, the pressure must be unbelievable.
It is. On the students, their families, years of intense preparation culminate in those few days.
And China's big push on STEM. Science, technology, engineering, maths. How does that show up?
It's heavily weighted in the curriculum, right from early on. It's a clear national strategy. They want to lead globally in these areas. And the education system is geared towards producing that talent pipeline.
So comparing them structurally, China is more unified, disciplined, very STEM-focused. India is more diverse, maybe more varied in quality because of the federal structure, less of a single national curriculum push.
That captures the core difference, I think. Discipline and uniformity versus diversity and variability.
Okay, let's talk tech. The digital age in education.
Yeah.
India saw a massive surge, right? Especially post-COVID. BYU's, Unacademy, those platforms exploded.
Absolutely. The pandemic was a huge catalyst. And you have government initiatives, too, like Diksha, SWAM, trying to provide digital
And
resources.
there's a digital divide. That's still a massive issue, isn't it?
Huge. How effective are these platforms if kids in rural areas or poorer communities don't have reliable internet or even devices? Access is still very uneven.
Yeah, that infrastructure piece is fundamental. Now, China seems like they're further ahead with integrating tech. AI, smart classrooms, online tutoring was huge.
They've invested heavily in the infrastructure, definitely. Tech giants like Alibaba, Tencent poured money into edtech, driving innovation in things like AI tutors, personalized learning.
But that also brings up other issues, right? Like the surveillance tech, tracking student performance, privacy concerns.
Yes, that's part of the picture. The use of analytics and monitoring is much more widespread, raising valid questions about privacy and student autonomy.
And then there was that big government crackdown on the private tutoring industry in China recently. What was behind that?
Well, it wasn't really anti-tech per se. It seemed more driven by concerns about excessive student pressure, the cost making inequality worse, and just general student well-being, an attempt to cool things down, level the field a bit.
Interesting. So comparing tech, China's maybe more advanced, more deployed system-wide. India's ed tech is growing fast, perhaps with more focus on inclusion, but battling that big access and infrastructure problem.
That sounds about right. Different stages, different challenges.
Okay, shifting gears to achievements, global standing. India's got the IITs, the IIMs, globally respected institutions.
Definitely. Premier institutions with international recognition.
And the success of the Indian diaspora, especially in tech and research, is phenomenal. CEOs of Google, Microsoft.
Undeniable proof of the talent pool. The intellectual capital is clearly there.
But the materials also suggest challenges, right?
Yeah.
Getting enough research funding within India, building that domestic innovation engine.
Exactly. How do you better support and, crucially, retain that talent within India? That seems to be a key issue. More robust domestic support needed.
That's the big question. Now, China, their top universities, Tsinghua, Peking, they rank really high globally now.
Consistently high, yes. And that reflects massive sustained government investment in higher education and R&D.
The scale of investment is just different.
Significantly different. You see it in research output, patent filings. They're leading in areas like AI research. Plus, initiatives like the Belt and Road extend their educational influence internationally.
So while India has this incredible talent base, China's government is investing much more strategically and at a much larger scale in higher ed and R&D, giving them an edge globally.
Arguably, yes. That consistent top-down funding allows them to really target key sectors and build capacity in a way that's harder within India's more fragmented system. It's a distinct advantage in the global knowledge race.
Which leads us, maybe uncomfortably, to pressure and mental health. In India, it's stark. High exam stress, that intense coaching culture, and tragically, student suicides linked to exams.
It's deeply concerning. The societal pressure, often pushing kids towards just engineering or medicine, creates this narrow funnel of perceived success.
And not enough support, like career counseling in schools.
Generally lacking, yes. Which leaves many students feeling immense pressure, often without guidance if their interests lie elsewhere. That exam focus we talked about just feeds into this cycle.
Yeah, it really does. What about China? The GaoKao pressure is obviously immense, as we discussed.
Extraordinary pressure, yeah. It's often seen as that single make-or-break event. But it's interesting the Chinese government is starting to acknowledge the mental health impact more publicly.
Oh, really? What are they doing?
They've begun implementing some initiatives, trying to provide more support, maybe reduce some academic burdens. It's a recognition, at least, that the pressure is taking a toll.
That's something.
Yeah.
And the family expectations in China. That adds another layer.
Oh, absolutely. Often a child's academic success carries the hopes, the aspirations of the whole family. Huge weight.
So comparing the pressure, both systems are intense. But maybe China's uniformity, the single focus on GaoKao, concentrates that pressure even more intensely across the board.
You could argue that. India might have more pathways, theoretically, but often lacks the support systems to help students navigate the stress associated with those pathways. Both face significant challenges here.
Okay, so bringing this all together, based on everything we've discussed, what are the key areas where India could, or maybe should, focus its efforts for improvement? Let's start with the curriculum.
Yeah, modernization seems key.
Yeah.
Really embedding those 21st century skills, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, not just as add-ons, but core parts.
And maybe less focus on just sheer volume of content.
Exactly. Reducing the syllabus burden, shifting to more hands-on experiential learning, understanding over memorizing.
Makes sense. And teacher training comes up again.
Absolutely vital. Continuous professional development, supporting teachers to actually use these new methods, focus on skills, on innovation, incentivizing that shift.
Right. Empowering the teachers. Infrastructure, especially digital.
Still a huge one. Bridging that digital divide, getting reliable access, devices, suitable content to rural and underserved areas, smart classrooms, basic amenities. It all matters.
And boosting research and innovation within India.
Yeah, increased funding for higher education research is critical. Plus, building much stronger links between universities and industry so research actually leads to innovation.
With EdTech growing so fast, regulation must be on the table too.
Definitely. Need a clear framework. Ensure quality, protect student privacy, make sure it's accessible, but without stifling the innovation that's happening. It's a balancing act.
How about assessment? Moving beyond just exams.
Big one. Shifting away from pure rote recall exams towards assessments that actually measure if students can apply knowledge and skills. Things like continuous assessment, portfolios, a more holistic view.
And equity. Ensuring everyone benefits.
Crucial. Specific focus needed for marginalized groups, tribal communities, rural kids, girls, and protecting India's incredible linguistic and cultural diversity within the education system, not homogenizing it.
Finally, that mental health piece.
Absolutely critical. Making counselors readily available in schools, running awareness programs, maybe peer mentoring, building a more supportive environment to counter those intense pressures.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, distinct histories, cultural values shaping these two massive systems.
Yeah, India's diverse English influence system versus China's more uniform Mandarin-focused one.
We looked at structures, curricula, the tech race, China ahead in deployment, India pushing for inclusion but facing access issues.
The big difference in government R&D investment, too.
Right, and the intense student pressures in both, albeit manifesting slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
And then those key areas for India to potentially focus on: curriculum, teachers, tech access, research, assessment, equity, mental health.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What can India realistically take from China's focus and investment? And what could China maybe learn from India's diversity or the global success of its diaspora?
Yeah, fascinating question. So a final thought for our listeners then. Considering everything, if you had to pick one single shift in focus, what do you think would have the biggest positive impact on education's future in either India or China, and why?
That's a tough one. No easy answers in this complex picture.
Definitely not. But it's a vital conversation. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.